See that lone pine up on that hill over there? What are we actually doing right now? The kids are just wild out there. They're wild. But they're having a good time, you know? They're having a good time. This is Untamed Unbroken, the Adventurer's Guide, and I'm your host, Blake Bredesen. Welcome to Untamed Unbroken. Today we are talking about canoeing with kids, and especially canoeing with kids who have never been in a canoe before. So we're going to talk about prep and planning, talk about teaching them about canoes and how to be in them, a little bit on when we're on the water, what we're doing, and then some tips here and there for that successful canoe experience for the kiddos and yourself, so everybody has a good time. Choose the right location. This is number one in the prep and the planning. Find an area that's typically a small body of water is what I would go for. When I brought my daughter for her first time in a canoe, she was 3 years old. We went to I would call it a pond. I think maybe technically it was a lake, but a very small lake. Cattails and stuff all around. Not a typical lake, but small. Not very deep. Windy. It was a little bit windy. We have a Kevlar canoe, so it doesn't have a keel, so the wind can really blow those ones around quite a bit, but half the lake was good. And so that's what we did. We went out there, found that small body of water, and that's where I took her on the first one. You want to just stay away from large lakes, stay away from fast-moving rivers, unless that large lake is calm and there's not a lot of people on it, just for a kid's first experience, and maybe your first time having small kids in your canoe. So keep it familiar, keep it calm, keep it small, and be prepared for a short trip. You know, you're going to be doing a lot of work and a lot of prep, throwing the canoe on the truck or the car, hauling it over to the access point, putting it in, getting everybody in the canoe, and you're going to do that for maybe an hour to an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours out in the canoe if it's a little kid, like it was for our 3-year-old. That's how it was. You know, we're out there for a couple hours. If they're doing well, you just try to gauge their comfort, their enthusiasm as they're out there. You can gauge that and you can stay longer or cut it off shorter, depending on how they're doing, how they're liking it, and how everything is going. But just plan on it being a shorter trip than if it was just you or just some adults or buddies going out. So I would say I don't know what the backup plan is here. You're going out and canoeing with your kid for an hour or two. Do you really need a backup plan? I think the backup plan is bailing. Maybe you have another lake in mind that you would like to go to. If it's too windy there, or that access point is winded, maybe you go to a different lake that isn't so bad. I have done that before. Went to a bigger lake. The wind was blowing from the south. The access point was on the north side of the lake. It was a no-go. So we went to this little pond that had an access point on the south side, and the wind was a non-factor. So just be ready for that. Safety gear, obviously. Life jackets. They all need life jackets. You need a life jacket. Just wear a life jacket. And just be careful with the kids and their life jackets. There's ones for infants that are like 0 to 30 pounds or whatever they're rated for. And then there's the next step up, which is typically 30 to 50 pounds. And sometimes those have a crotch strap with those ones. Sometimes, not all of them do. But just make sure that fits properly and that they're wearing it. Sun protection. Anytime you're on the water, that sun's going to reflect off the water. That reflection off the water, it increases your sun exposure. So you just burn easier when you're on the water. Have a little first aid. Obviously, that's how I always roll, is being prepared. So always have some Band-Aids, tweezers, any bug spray. Bring some bug spray, stuff like that. If your kids have allergies, having some things for bug bites or stuff like that. Our son he swells up pretty good from just little bug bites. And so either having some sort of Benadryl type cream or hydrocortisone, stuff like that. Clothing, make sure they're wearing, I mean, this kind of goes without saying. You're going out for a quick trip, probably typically, right? And then as trips get longer, as the kids get more comfortable and you start to go out more, yes, having some dressing them appropriately, layering, having some extra clothes, maybe in a dry bag or just at the car or at your vehicle. Maybe it's some towels at the vehicle would be a good idea. An extra pair of shoes, maybe, or maybe just a pair of like Crocs or flip flops. That's what I throw them in the Crocs or flip flops to be in the canoe themselves. And I wear either Crocs or sandals, Keen sandals, ones that have a little bit of a toe covering, stuff like that for wet entry, wet exit. With my particular canoe, I don't like to be banging it up on the shore or the rocks, Kevlar. So hydration, snacks, I would like to bring insulated bottles of water for the kids, and then just bring in some snacks, bars, sandwiches, fruit. You can bring a little cooler with some stuff in it. You're not going to be out there too long for a first trip, so you don't need too much for this. But if it's an all-day affair, bring in lunch, whatever. Number 2, we're going to talk about teaching the kids about canoeing. So basic instructions, entering and exiting the canoe. Teach them how to get out of a canoe safely. Stabilize the canoe while they're entering and exiting. Seating arrangements. I would have the kids sit in the middle, somewhere closer to the middle. It's going to be a little bit better for balance. It's going to give them a little more room. And then just explaining the importance of staying seated or staying kneeling and not leaning over to the side quickly. In my canoe, I have a 17.5-foot North Star. It's just their standard Kevlar Aramid. And I have the typical bow and stern seats, but then I have an additional bow seat that is right in front of the yoke, and the yoke is reversed. And then I have a kneeling thwart in the rear. So my rear thwart is a kneeling thwart. So it's a different setup. They call it the camp setup, or I don't know. It's like the camper setup, the kid-friendly one. So if my wife is in the front seat, I'm in the back. She's in the bow. She has the kids right behind her on an extra wide seat that's right in front of the yoke. I can solo, like, this is the canoe I took my daughter out the first time. I had her sitting in that, and I was kneeling in the kneeling thwart position just behind the yoke, and it worked great. I can still reach her if I need to, and I can hand her stuff. So it's a good seating arrangement. I also have a solo canoe, and for that one, I'm just sitting in the seat in the middle, and they're in front of me, and I just try to throw a little weight in the back. But when they're little, under 50 pounds, it's not like it's too much weight to have. You're not really bow heavy because your weight is technically in the stern half. So paddling techniques, if they're a little older, you can try to teach them some of the paddling techniques and the paddling strokes, just the basics on land. Demonstrate the forward, the back, the draw, the J stroke, C stroke, whatever you want to teach them, depending on their age. You can teach this and try to show them on land before you get in the water, and then go ahead and then practice in the water. See if you can get them to synchronize their strokes with yours for a smoother roll out there. Just going over some safety rules, it would be stay seated, no leaning. Teach them not to lean over the sides or stand up in the canoes or really move suddenly. And then to listen and communicate and make sure they understand the importance of these instructions and the importance of listening to them, and then communicating any discomfort or just concerns that they might have. Let's go over some packing essentials. Obviously, you need a canoe. You need some paddles. I'm not even going to get into that. Have some paddles that are kid size. So I have one that's kid size, and then I have an emergency paddle that telescopes out, but when it's telescoped in, it's kind of perfect size for little kids under 5. Dry bag. Just throw some personal items in a dry bag. Attach that to your canoe just in case you're going overboard. If you're in a familiar area, you don't really need that map or compass. But if you are in an unfamiliar area, having a map or compass or having a downloaded map on your phone or something like that is a good idea. Comfort items, cushions or seats. So when I brought my daughter on and I say my daughter, I haven't even brought my son in the canoe yet. He's 2, and this year is the year for sure. I just haven't gotten to it. But cushions or seats. So in our big 17.5 footer, they have a seat that they can sit on, and they could sit side by side. It's a big and wide seat. You could put a cushion on there if you want. In the solo canoe where they're just on the floor, I just bring some small pads, some small butt pads that they can sit on to make it a little bit more comfortable for them. So I do that. Bring some fun stuff. Have them, if you really want, you bring some binoculars, bring a camera like a kid camera that they can take pictures and have some fun. Keep them involved with that stuff, and obviously take some pictures with your phone or something yourself. Or bring some fun items for the kids. It's smaller kids. You got to keep them entertained. They're not going to be paddling for an hour straight like you are going to be. So bring some small toys, some waterproof game, keep them entertained. Fishing gear. Bring them some fishing gear if they like to fish. Like I brought my daughter her little fishing pole, and we did a little bit of that. We didn't catch anything, but it's just like the process of it and exposing them to what it is like. You could have a little nature a nature guide, even as you're paddling along the shoreline, just playing little games with them and looking for wildlife, looking at the shoreline, looking for cool little features or trees, whatever it is. Just have some fun and engage with them while you're paddling around, even if they're not paddling the whole time. So when you're on the water, stabilize the canoe. When they're getting in, have it stable. Let them get in first, then you get in. Get them, even when you're on the shore and you're just standing next to the canoe, you could rock it back and forth. Let them feel it out and see how it feels to balance and move in that canoe a little bit before you just go out into the deep end. So start slowly. Go for a little short distance. That first trip is going to generally be shorter, and you can work it up to doing an all-day paddle with your kids. And you gradually just increase that length and the difficulty over time. And keep it fun. Like I was saying, you look for wildlife. Play games like I Spy, 20 questions. Keep it interesting. Keep them engaged. And take breaks. If you're out there for a longer period of time, take some breaks to rest or have a snack or pull up onto shore and go explore if you're able to, if it's not private property. If you're with communication, so having some clear signals, if you're separate from, say there's 2 canoes, having a way to communicate and having some signals, just having some simple walkie-talkies is nice too. After it, talk about what they liked, what they didn't like, discuss it with them, have them keep a little journal even. That's fun. Journal it yourself, what worked, what didn't work, so you can on the next one have a better experience on the next one. And then plan the next one. And then explore new locations. Go to a new spot. Don't just keep going to the same old spot if you have that option. And then throw in things like an overnight camping trip or a fishing experience. So an overnight trip would be something you really build up to. And then some tips for a successful experience with these kids, especially that first time. But I feel like anytime you're with kids, and no matter what activity, this is going to be what you want to do. Patience is key. You have to be patient. You have to be supportive. especially if it's their first time. So that positive reinforcement is going to go a long way for them and for you. So stay positive, keep a positive attitude. Things aren't always going to go as planned. And so making it fun, making it memorable, adapting, being flexible is going to give you guys a better experience. And then lead by example. If you show enthusiasm and respect nature, kids are going to mimic you. They're going to mimic your behavior. They're going to mimic your attitude. And then safety first. Always prioritize safety over any adventure. So be prepared for emergencies and have a plan in place. And as always, stay wild. Thank you for sticking around. If you've enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating and review, even one word, it helps a ton. Sincerely appreciate you guys. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the next one. Stay wild.
You've been listening to Untamed, Unbroken, a Lone Pine Adventures original podcast.